back here at the Hall of History, continuing our look at World War One. World War One only didn't occur on the battlefront in France for the Americans. It also occurred on the home front, and it really changed the landscape of the social landscape of America forever. It's interesting to note and I'll be putting some of these posters from World War One in the propaganda machine in full force in America. This one was always one of the more dramatic ones. I can remember this from high school myself. Beat back the Hun with Liberty bonds, and it shows this menacing creature. Looks like it would with blood on his bayonet, on his hands, and this was the propaganda machine in the United States going full tilt. Well, back home, the U.S. industry had to really ramp it up, and it was interesting. Congress gave President Wilson really the control of the economy, and here was one of the first instances where the government started to control the majority of the economy, and depending on your view, it still goes on to this day. The War Industries Board did some really good things. They increased production by 20% of all the manufacturing plants in the United States that were producing war material. The whole idea of standardized products and parts. We looked at this with the shipbuilding earlier. Now it was very easy. One company would make one particular item, and then it would be used in other things. One interesting one, there was about 150 different colors of typewriter ribbon at this time, and the government persuaded the manufacturers of typewriter ribbon to knock it down to 5 different colors. So it was much more economically feasible to produce these mass quantities. One thing, the price controls were at the wholesale level only, and this meant the retail prices were set by the manufacturer, and they just skyrocketed. At this time, these companies made oodles of money. There were much profits to be made by the industries. War is good for the economy. If you look at any military action by the United States, there are certain sections of the economy that do very well, and it is still true to this day. Here's a nice little poster, Teamwork Wins. America on the home front. It was united. It was all for the war effort. The war economy, again, we saw the wages rose in the war industry, so the workers did make money. The stockholders, again, were the ones that really make out on this. And also at this time, union membership increased to 4 million union members. But along with this, there were 6,000 strikes during the wartime. And as we'll see in the next couple slides, this also created problems in the United States. We also had the Food Administration help produce and conserve food. Homeowners planted victory gardens. Any plot of land, you would grow your own vegetables and so forth. Also noted at this time, 40 million additional acres went into food production in the United States. This did lead to some problems later on. That'll be for our next unit when we get over after the semester break. Notice again the propaganda poster. Be patriotic, sign your country's pledge to save the food. It's interesting note as I was looking these up, and you can Google these on your own, is the vast majority of the posters during this time had women in them. The men were fighting to save the women, to save their mothers, their daughters, their girlfriends, their wives, their sisters, whatever. And it's interesting to note that. And so if you get a chance, just Google World War I posters, and the vast majority of these recruiting posters, all these, showed women in them. Selling the war, you had to pay for it. Victory bonds were sold to the public. There were higher taxes on just about everything. We had progressive income tax, where the more you made, the more tax you would pay. Selling the war was just not about paying for it, but also making people feel good about it and get behind it. And that is the whole idea of propaganda. Posters, cartoons, books, as we'll get into later in the century, the German propaganda machine doing films. You had to get people behind it. This one I thought was kind of interesting. If you want to fight, join the Marines. Women were not allowed in the military at this time in any sort of a combat role. But here again, you see a woman with a Marine Corps uniform on, and it was a calculated propaganda move by the government at this time. Save home and hearth from the evil empire of the Germans. One unfortunate part of all this that many civil liberties were really kind of pushed underneath the carpet, if you will. Unfortunately, the anti-immigrant hysteria, as you would expect at this time, if you had a German name, you lost your job, you were really looked down upon. This really played out in World War II with the Japanese internment camps. The Espionage and Sedition Acts. Again, looking for traitors, looking for acts that people would do that would be targeted as being anti-patriotic. Well, these acts really targeted socialists. Eugene Debs was jailed for a while, and the labor leaders, especially if they did a strike, that would slow down war material production, and they were jailed for anti-war activities. This definitely violated the First Amendment, the whole idea of freedom of speech, but as we'll see later on, and we saw really during the Civil War, that when a nation is at war, many of your civil liberties are suspended for a while. Probably the biggest thing at home, excuse me, is the social landscape was changed, and it never went back to before this time. Once it changed, it was changed for good. Many African Americans moved to the North for the job opportunities. Again, as we saw during the Civil War, most of the production and manufacturing jobs were held in the North. And what ended up happening, there was, again, racial discrimination in the South. There was some drought in the South. The cotton was not growing as well because of this drought. People needed jobs, and they moved north. Once you get on wartime footing, production jobs are plentiful, and the African Americans definitely moved north here. The other thing which happened here is women moved into the workforce. The women did jobs previously held by men, and once people found out women could do the job, there was a real social battle going on when the men came back from the war also. And so you really changed this whole social landscape of the United States by this all-encompassing World War I. And we'll see this happen again, just about the exact same thing happen again as we get into World War II. But it's an interesting time frame here. Women's at this time, really didn't hold many jobs, clerical, teaching, so forth. But now they got into the whole idea of manufacturing jobs, which paid pretty well. And an interesting change to the fabric of the social fabric, I should say, of the United States. And we'll look at that a little bit more as we get into the second semester.